Hi, I want to welcome you to week 7 of our study of the 7 churches of Revelation. Have you ever run into a new Christian that can't stop talking about what they're learning in the Bible? They're quoting Bible verses from books you didn't even know were in the Bible. Zephaniah says this and Zechariah says that. And the Italian prophet, Malachi. Even said this. Yeah, I know his name's not Malachi, it's Malachi. But forget the name. They're quoting things that you didn't even know because they're diving into the Bible and telling everybody what they're learning. You can't get them to stop talking about the Bible. They're so excited. But after meeting some like this, has it ever left you thinking, when did that all-consuming fire for Christ dwindle down into such a small flame within me? I bet that's exactly how the Laodicean church thought when they first heard Christ's letter read aloud to them. Can you imagine the shock and disbelief as they learned of Christ's displeasure for the entire church? They had probably thought to themselves, I'd agree with Jesus about our being healthy, wealthy, and wise, but he said we're self-deceived. He said we're lukewarm. He called us lukewarm. Think about his displeasure with them. He gets very specific. He was displeased with their deeds. He said, you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold. Now, a few miles away in a town called Hierapolis, there were hot springs, and these hot springs were good for soothing aches and pains. Today, we have hot tubs, and they're readily available. Even if you just want to run hot water in your tub, you can have it. But people had to travel there, or they had to have the water transported from Hierapolis to Laodicea. And by the time it would get there, it was no longer a hot spring, it was lukewarm water. But also, a few miles away in a town of Colossae, they had cool springs. And these cool springs had refreshing water, satisfying water, life-giving water. But again, by the time it was transported to Laodicea, both these waters would have been lukewarm. And so he talks about this. He also talks about their deeds. I'm not talking about works for salvation, but they were to be a living sacrifice. They weren't doing that. They were not living up to their deeds of worship. They weren't living up to the service that God expected from them. Their service was lukewarm. They had lost their passion for Christ, and he was going to spit them out of his mouth. He was going to vomit them out. What a strong statement of his displeasure for them and their deeds. He was displeased with their misconceptions. They thought they were blessed. They said, we're greatly blessed for God. Look at our lives. We are so blessed. We have all these things. It's a life of ease and everything's going our way. But Jesus says, you are pitiful. They thought they were joyful. We just love God. We love life. And it's all so great. And they thought, man, this is just great. But Jesus says, you're miserable and you don't even know it. They thought that they were rich. Laodicea, the people there were rich and they had great resources and the economy was great and their checking accounts were great. They had a great 401k program. But Jesus says, in reality, you're poor. They thought they had great vision. Laodicea was a place where they had eye salve, where people would come to put the salve on to heal problems with their eyes. They thought they had great vision and healthy eyes. But Jesus says, in reality, you are blind. They thought that they were finely clothed. They had a material there that would sell across the nations, and people would come to get it, and they would sell it, and they made lots of money because of this. And they thought that they were finely clothed because of this. But Jesus says, really, you're just naked. This is how Christ sees a lukewarm church and lukewarm Christians. He wants us to reopen the doors of our hearts and reignite a passionate relationship with him. A call to awaken from spiritual apathy can be embarrassing, confusing, and painful. However, like the church at Laodicea, Jesus is at the door knocking on our lives and saying, hey, I want to come in and I want to lead you back into a passionate relationship with me. Like the Laodicean church, Christ's expectation is for us to have a growing passion. A growing passion will help us overcome all of Satan's distractions. So what can we do to ensure we have a continual growing passion? Well, first of all is this. we need to make sure Sunday worship is toward an audience of one. Our worship isn't toward the people who are singing on stage or to the pastor when he's preaching. Our audience isn't those that are sitting around with us. Our audience is an audience of one. It is God himself. As we're lifting up our voices, it should be a pleasing sound to God. And so the first way we do that is music is our worship of God. It's very easy for a church service for music to become simply entertaining to us. As you sing, you begin focusing on the words instead of you focus on the entertainment part, how you like the song, how you enjoy the song. But what we really need to do is we focus on the words and how they relate to God, how they describe God. We let all the voices fade around us until we're simply focusing on God and him alone. Secondly, it's tithing is our worship of God. Make sure you're focused on your obedience to give. The amount of your gift doesn't really make you special. I've had people say, well, if you knew how much I'd give to the church, you would give me what I want. Sorry, that's Greek. No, that's not it at all. You're not special because of what you give. Tithing is an outward sign of an inward trust, an inward faith, and an inward obedience to God. We tithe because God has called us to, and we want to give back to God, showing our trust for him. Thirdly, serving is our worship of God. Your spiritual gift is given to help others. Again, you're not special because of your gift. Your gift may seem more important. You may be right out in front of people, but that doesn't make you special. All gifts are needed for the church to survive. And so we need to remember this. Sunday worship is always an audience of one. Everything we do is toward God. Secondly, make sure you spend quality time with Christ daily. How can you be passionate about something or someone that you don't know? How can you be passionate about God when you never spend time with him? How can you be passionate about Christ when you don't spend time with him? Passion is not the same thing as lust. Listen, passion isn't the same thing as lust is something, I got to have this to meet this need. Passion is, I need this to survive today. Passion is built upon time, trust, and truth. And these things develop a loving passion for Christ and for others. The third thing is this. Make sure you study the Bible, not just for 5 or 10 minutes in a daily reading. Listen, I think devotions are great. Currently, at this recording, I have 2 devotions. One is taking a year to work through the Psalms and taking a year to work through the Proverbs. Now, each of these combined, if I read both of them combined, it takes me less than 10 minutes. The way I look at devotionals are great, and I think you should use them. But they're like stretching before you get out and exercise. You don't say, I'm going to go to the gym and exercise, or I'm going to go for a run, and you stretch your legs and your arms and say, all right, I've done my exercise, I'm done. You stretch, and then you go for a run or a ride, or you lift weights. A devotional should be to get you ready so that your mind is ready spiritually to dive into a book of the Bible or a topic or however it is you study your Bible. It's time for you to dive in and see what truths you can glean from that text. Fourthly, we need to make sure that we're connected with others in a community group. Groups are where we knock the rough edges off. We see beyond our own filters. I know what my filters are. My parents have been married since 1963. I'm going to let you do the math, and because I can't even begin. It's getting close to 60 years. And so my parents have been married. That's a filter for me. I grew up in Owasso when the graduating class was barely even 200 people. Now it's huge, but that's another filter. I went to a private Baptist Bible college. I went to a Baptist seminary. So Baptist doctrine is a filter for me. I need to put myself around people who have had other experiences from me. And you may not figure this out or know this, but I'm white. I'm white. I'm not a person of color. You can put what I know about being a person of color in a thimble and have plenty of room left over. I need to be around people who are different than me because their filters and the things they've learned can help me be a better person. And the filters that I have had can help them be a better person. And so community, we learn to knock off the rough edges of the things that we haven't experienced or we don't know. I remember I had a friend in the church. Well, it was an acquaintance in the church. Well, honestly, it wasn't either of those. It was someone I really didn't like. I didn't like to be around them. They would walk by me and man, they would get on my nerves just the way they would breathe. And I just couldn't handle them. And I remember one time they came down to the front of the church to ask me to pray for them at the end of a service. And they started telling me their story. And as they were telling me their story, tears were rolling down their eyes. And inside, the only thing I could do is I was listening to them, but I was praying, God, forgive me. Once I heard their story, my attitude toward them changed because I realized that I was being a jerk. I wasn't loving them as God loved me. I was not liking them because they didn't measure up to what I think somebody should be. And when I heard their story, when I got outside my filter and I saw theirs, it changed. You see, in groups, we find accountability partners. In groups, we hold one another accountable. The fifth thing is this, is make sure you have a special time of thanksgiving, praise, and worship of God. This is beyond your daily Bible study time. This is beyond your quiet time. This is a time that is especially focused on thanksgiving to God, praise of God, and worship. During this time of prayer, you're not asking for anything. No prayer requests at this time. Your entire focus is upon God's grandeur, His grace, His love, His provision, and His mercy. If we're to overcome Satan's distractions, we must have an ever-growing passion for Christ. The Laodicean church lost their passion for Christ because they focused on health, wealth, and their socioeconomic standing. Our standing in the world is never an assurance of God's blessing. However, a passionate heart for the things and glory of God are a sure sign of who has control of our heart. I hope this study has placed a yearning for a deeper, more passionate relationship with Christ within you.